Great. So thank you. Welcome to the Finance Committee of the Orange County IDA. Chairman Torelli is en route. As Vice Chairman, I'll start and open the meeting. So we'll begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all stand, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So welcome now. So I'd like to turn the table over to Bill Ferravante to detail the agenda for tonight's committee meeting.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Dowden. I'm going to start with roll call first. Michael Torelli is not here yet, as you said, but he should be here shortly. John Dowden?
Here.
All right. Paul Vaskevich?
Here.
Dean Kimbrough?
Here.
Vincent Odock?
Here.
And Lindsay Fury is not present. We also have myself, Bill Ferravante, Agent Manager for the IDA. We have Kelly Riley, Project Manager for the IDA, joining us for this. Thanks very much. So just a few items we want to talk about here. Primary subject is really investments, the IDA's investments, OCFC, OCIDA investments. We estimate about between $1.5 million to just over $2.5 million. It's probably available to be invested. That's right now sitting in our checking accounts, obviously not earning anything. I want to talk about that tied to our investment policy. We also have something tied to the OCFC Resiliency Loan Fund for the COVID loan fund. We have a couple of requests from some borrowers that want to make changes to their payment terms. So we'd like to cover that as well. And we wanted to give you a first blush look at our 2022 draft budget. But I have to tell you, I've been working through it. There's just so much to do. Without the CFO there, I have to find a way to be able to drill down more for some more knowledge. And one of the thoughts I had was to see if I could reach out to JGS, our auditors. They have as much knowledge as anyone at this point that we have access to. I'd love to be able to reach out to them. I'm not sure if they would charge me for that by the hour, but if so, it's just a resource I need to take advantage of. So in order to really get you a proper draft, and you need it soon, I think I need that outside expertise to be able to lean on. So I plan to do that if that sounds okay with everyone. So I'll get back to you on the budget. Now let's dive into the investment policy piece here, which you have in as far as packets. First of all, you have this one that has kind of a matrix of research that we did over the last couple of weeks, getting CD rates as well as money market accounts and CDARs. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that is, let's see if I can pull that up. That's something that was recommended by, in this case, Lakeland Bank, pardon me, saying that we may be able to get better rates with that. So I can pull up the information for that here in a second. So you have that sheet that has comparisons, and below, behind that sheet is a copy of a resolution from the prior board administration. The chairman, welcome, sir. Really, this resolution defines which banking institutions we're able to invest in. So we have to stick to what is per this policy. Is there, and you see the firms that are identified. So back to the sheet where we're comparing rates. Notice that I have some institutions that are not. I really tried to scour everything in the area. There's only the one in yellow that we're able to use per the current investment policy, unless we change that. So I mentioned that we probably a balance between $1.5 million and $2.5 million that we could invest in a CD or money market account. What you also have with you is. This is all on the investment policy. First is an email from JGS, because I talked to them trying to get some further guidance on this. There is an excerpt here of public authorities law right here that talks about the limitations for agencies like IDAs and what they can invest in and what they can't. And then behind that is our investment policy. Mr. Canberra found it for me. Thank you. And again, it talks about what we're able to do, what we're not able to do. There are a few options that we've been exploring as to, in lieu of having our own CFO, how we can make sure we're complying with our own policy. Do we need to make any changes to any of the language in order to keep us in compliance with it, and make sure we're doing something that's practical? Again, we don't have a CFO right now, so I had to explore with the county attorney's council. I had to explore some options. One, I called some of our colleague IDAs in the region, in the Mid-Hudson here that I work with and I'm familiar with, about the idea of perhaps sharing a CFO. And I had more than one that's interested in at least exploring that idea. A couple of them is just not the right time or not interested. There was a little frank concern about, is there conflict of interest? Because as we talked about freely, I think we consider ourselves partners, regional partners in this. And in Mid-Hudson, you have to team up. But there is a sense of some competition, obviously. I mean, we're competing against, look, I wasn't happy to see Amazon go with the Duchess or DocuWare threatening to go there. We want to keep those obviously our business is here. But in this case, with the CFO, I think there are opportunities to maybe have clear lines of demarcation. So I think that's something we could explore further. Another idea is I talked to a local investment firm here based in Goshen that does do a lot of institutional investment work for local colleges, hospitals, et cetera, and they had worked with IDAs, and they talk about the idea of basically being a chief investment officer for a CFO of sorts, but only for investments where they would make those recommendations if we needed that kind of expertise there. So that is something else we could continue to explore. The only challenge is, again, we have restrictions as to what, as an IDA using taxpayer money, that we can invest in. We can't just go invest in the market and invest in stocks, et cetera. So it's generally CD, money markets, or as I'm showing here, CDAR. It has to be something in that kind of family. But who actually can make that recommendation? That's just one thing I'm stuck on because, again, we don't have the CFO. Until we do have one, we either have to change the language on there or we have to get somebody to kind of serve that role, at least for this purpose. I will also say that I spoke to a local IDA not a large IDA, and they have a similar policy to ours, but they don't have a CFO, but they do allow the CEO to act in this capacity right now. So whether or not that's the best scenario, I'm not sure, but those are the things that we have to tackle is what do we think of the right investments here, especially looking at that chart. Are we okay with just the firms that are listed here? Do we have the options that we need? And what are your thoughts on actually managing the investment side and satisfying our policy that says that someone needs to have financial expertise? So, John, you got to look at these. We talked a little bit before the meeting about it. You want to start us off with any thoughts on what you see here, rates and policy and anything else?
Yeah, sure. And just, obviously, my biggest points, and one of the things we've all talked about is transparency, and there's no more important piece in the transparency than the finance piece, and the money is and where it's invested, where it's going, what we expect from it. So, we'll continue to follow that guideline and that framework which we've always operated under. My first blush is great. Thank you for you and Kelly for getting us this information and having an understanding of obviously the New York State consolidated law, what the IDA can invest in, the previous policy, and then the organizations with which we can. They're all sophisticated organizations with high balance sheets. So our $1.5 to $2 million certainly isn't going to be at risk using any one of these institutions. My feeling would be is that we don't put any money, as Dean mentioned, we talked about that, is immediate need of liquidity at risk, of course, and then what we do find and use would be in some very comfortable, very boring almost interest rate environment that we have one more dollar tomorrow than we have today. And these are good institutions. I've used Orange Bank in the past, wonderful organization. I've used HVIA in the past, wonderful organization. JGSG, if you need a motion to hire them to use in some regard, I would certainly be supportive of that. But that's my feeling. What we're able to do, I think, the aggregator of that amount gives us a better rate with an organization. I don't know if we need to go to 3 or 4 different groups, but 1 or 2 is probably a good idea.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think I go along with what you say about narrowing that to just a few institutions. But again, we probably have to look at their background, run a background on this. investment institutions to see in the past the trend. Have there been complaints on particular institutions, so that before we get involved with them?
I'm thinking that, I think this is part of John's point, that this list are banks, you know, with that kind of reputation, that backing, that, you know, track record. John, would you say that that's kind of what makes up this list, that we have that confidence, that's what we get with this kind of list?
Yeah, I think it's probably worth looking at the publicly traded companies, which most of them seem to be, and a lot of that vetting process is already done, and that's the publicly traded avenues area. But it's a great point, but it seems like some of these are probably already vetted, but it's a good idea to see if we have any other kind of thoughts on that. But most of them are probably already vetted in that public institution. Yeah.
We would also want to make sure that there's no conflict of interest with any of these banks and any of our whether board members and stuff. I know that this board-approved institutions were approved by the previous board, and some of those previous board members worked for those specific institutions. So, I mean, not to say that there isn't, you know, it is what it is. And the types of stuff that we would potentially get into are not anywhere near being controversial.
Yeah.
And so a determination would have to be made, a better probably determination with a full list of what the different rates are at each institution that we would be thinking of. So we have a full gamut of options potentially at our next meeting to vote upon and potentially start investing into.
But I think that's where I'm at right now. Yeah.
I can slide down.
It's all me here. Let's see.
I did.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, how you doing? Okay, thank you, Dean. So I guess what I'd like to know now is, because I know we don't want to wait any longer. We have money we want sitting there. We want to get it invested. So our next board meeting is September 15th. If you think that it's prudent to wait until then, if you want to let me know exactly, you know, everything, what other answers you want, what other options you want me to explore, what other detail, I'll make sure we have that. John mentioned HVIA, that is the local investment firm. They are willing to make a presentation about what they do as chief investment officer playing that role with institutional clients of theirs.
Yeah, I mean, well, when it comes down, I think you're asking two questions, Will.
Yeah.
One is, do we want to have a consultant, or do we want to hire a consultant? And if so, then we have to publicly advertise for that and interview and give everybody a shot at that,
Right.
You know, type of thing.
Sure.
Another thing is, do we want to make a decision based upon recommendation from staff and to whomever else, maybe some consultants that we're already working with, on what we want to do on September 15th? We're not, in a committee meeting, we're not allowed to make a decision. So the next time we're meeting is September 15th. And I think that gives us 2 weeks to put our stuff together, identify maybe some potential options. Like we said, they're not going to be risky and they're not going to be long-term. So maybe I hate to use this word dabble, but maybe some of the options are we take a portion of the money of which we believe should be invested and only be a small portion. We can do it again in October. We can do it again at the end of the year. We can do it as the market changes. We don't have to do it all at once. Right? But the idea would be to have a full option of what we want to do. And in this list here, the one that's highlighted, there's a lot of not provided or unavailable yet, but
Yeah.
I'll go along with what other people have said. Yeah, a lot of these are publicly vetted, publicly traded companies that have, you know, that others are allowed to, you know, that anyone's allowed to do business with. These are not offshore type things or anything like that. So I think a little more research and then a recommendation from staff would be something that could be presented to the board, and then the board can decide if so, what we want to do.
So currently we don't have an investment, correct? We're not investing.
We have a couple of CDs. I think we have one in Sterling and one in MEC Bank.
Okay. And a money market.
And it was
And a money market.
And we'll be leaving those monies where they are, correct? Or no, we're taking it out and moving them? Is that what we're?
It's actually additional funds that we're talking
Okay,
about.
good.
But
Right, so that's what I apologize. The money we're talking about investing is not invested at this point.
correct. It's in a checking account.
So then I'm with Bill, and I don't want to complicate it. I'd like to make a decision to maximize what we can, what little we're going to get, and it's safe to actively have the information we need personally. I think we just choose a good institution out of this list, and we choose it and take care of it on the 15th. I don't think we have to really do a whole lot. I personally don't think so.
What about, just so I'm clear on it, what about the idea of entertaining someone to advise us with that? Do you want, as you said, we'd have to put that out? Is that something we want to think about even, asking for, or kind of what you're saying, John, we have enough information to make our own decisions?
I'm kind of with Mike. I mean, HBIA, again, so they are the investment arm or connection to Orange Bank and Trust. I think, they're probably a little north of what we're looking for, right? So, they're a sophisticated crew. I don't know if we're at that level of sophistication regarding our investments. I don't know if we need them right now at this point.
Yeah, so I would imagine that would come with a fee,
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Yeah, so that's, yeah, so,
no question.
yeah.
For what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah, for what we're doing, yeah.
A quick question, I mean, just not looking at this beforehand, I apologize. No credit unions, are we not allowed, or is that something that's only allowed? There's a lot of those getting bigger and bigger and having more following and having more, I'll say, I don't know if all members, because really anybody that's in the area could be a member. That, and some of them offer some great rates.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, I'm not sure if that's allowed or not, but if it is allowed, it's something that we may want to entertain and look into. And like I said, we don't need to do everything all at once. Maybe we do, I just started, maybe we do $100,000 in a CD in one place, another one someplace else. And a couple months later, as we approve a budget into 2022, we recognize maybe some additional assets that we don't need immediately, and then we can do a little bit more. And you don't want them all at the same time anyway. I mean, you want to stagger them so they're coming due, so that they become, it becomes liquid for you. Sure thing.
So back to the credit unions, do you want me to, how about I get that information like I have in this matrix here? And if we like the rates, that's an amendment to the policy. My understanding is we could make to add those institutions to the approved list. That's something I don't know, maybe I'll need to clarify with the county attorney is, does this have to be set so much time in advance of your investment? I wouldn't see why that would, does this list need to be in stone? Or can we change it and then choose one of the new ones that we added to it? So,
Good.
I'll clarify that.
So I don't know, like, what is the credit union rate right now as compared to the bank rate?
And most banks.
But I mean, again, for me, none of these rates move the needle on me, really. I don't know, will that credit union move the needle on this? First, it'd be great for us to know whether we can do it or not, and then, of course, the higher the rate, the higher the risk. But, for between 1% and 3% or 1 and, 0.08, these, this isn't like, 3% versus 8%, there's not a lot.
No, I agree with everyone.
So, but right now, with what money we're talking about, I say we have some policy in place. I say we invest that money. I agree with Mike. As future comes up, we get the other ones approved, and then maybe start adding to those. But I don't think at this point we have to complicate it, because we at this point in time, I think we should get some of this money into one of the funds. And then from there, we can change the policies or whatever. And so take the money we're referring to, put it into one of these that's already approved and been vetted, and then future, maybe add to the list and add to that. And then at that point, we'll have someone that fits into this policy that will be making some decisions, and then we can go from there.
Okay, great. So how about I do, before the 15th, I revise it, I'll add credit unions, a couple that I haven't been able to get a hold of, I'll try them again, make this as complete a list as possible, so you have all the options available to you, make sure everything is up to date again. Now this is a couple weeks old, some of this is. And how about I speak with the county attorney, and I am seeking some other guidance from council, about being able to, the other thing is, can I come on the 15th with some suggested changes to our policy along with this? If we think in order to utilize one of these additional firms, we have to change that, or if we need to change some language here about who authorizes this, I'd like to bring those suggestions also to the 15th.
That's probably someone discussed is like, who can authorize this at this time? Right. So that's unclear.
I want to make sure that's right.
That's unclear. Would it be the finance committee?
Right.
As a whole? Or it really, who's going to make the final decision? We all agree here, but what we're going to almost do, it's just a question, who can actually do it now, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, the idea here is that at a committee level, staff level, discussion level, a recommendation will be made, to the full board will vote on anything.
And we'll make it as a full board, perfect.
That's and then that includes bylaw changes, whether it's for this policy, any other policy, anything that's in our bylaws. I would imagine that periodically we're gonna have bylaw amendments that we want to change. I think we already did some.
Yeah.
So the same type of way. The hope is that you get them ahead of time so you can read them. Yeah. You can understand them, ask some questions if we need to internally, and at the meeting, everyone's good with them, or we need to make a change, or something small, then we should vote on.
I agree. So whatever, you're talking about, make sure that everyone on the board knows, so they can ready to discuss it at that point, and you can move forward.
Terrific, will do. Great. And thank you all for that. Second item is the OCFC resiliency loan. Now, first of all, I'll say, and I'm going to lean on Kelly, and thanks for being here, Kelly. We did offer Kelly the option of shifting her time so that she can come in tonight, and she just came at 7 in the morning like she always does, and she's here now, so thank you. So about the OCFC resiliency loan, that is one of the the primary duties that we're transitioning without the CFO, that we've transitioned over to UHY. That's basically our outsourced bookkeeping and accounting firm. That's something that they were not managing, CFO was, and they are now. And there's been a lot of communication, I see, between you and UHY. So just trying to make sure we have it right and get the reporting right. For the 15th, we'll have financial reports for that. I don't feel they're ready from what I saw. I feel like we still have to make sure that we're going back and forth a little with Scott. But we do have two, I alluded to this at the last board meeting, two borrowers who are asking for some changes to their terms based upon hardship, essentially. Without naming names, Kelly, can you summarize those, please?
Yes. There was one that's asking for a 6-month modification that started, this is like a past due one that had started back in December and it would have ended in June of this year. He never sent in the paperwork that was signed, so he's asking if we could go back and do that, and he would start payments like in the June timeframe. He hasn't started any payments yet.
So Kelly, I don't mean to interrupt, but just to clarify, there was a deferral, 6-month deferral that was available to everyone, right?
Yeah.
And this particular business owner thought that says that he submitted those. We never saw those forms. So then months later, he's saying, well, I meant to do that, and then he submitted the forms, right? So he's looking for that 6-month deferral after the fact.
Right.
Any other changes to the terms he's requesting?
No.
Okay.
So it's an existing program that he reported to others, or had the ability for others to enter into.
He just missed the window. I don't know how hard of a deadline there was for returning that payment. The paperwork. So.
When this first started coming in, I asked his prior CFO, and he said that we would be able to, because the board had agreed to it the last time, and would be able to accommodate his request if he wanted to.
Okay. Would you like to hear the second request first for any other discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you would do is you make a recommendation to the board, and we vote on it on the 15th during the OCFC portion of the.
If you don't mind, I'd love to just go through it to see if there's any other details you want or any other homework we need to do, so we give you every answer you need on the 15th to make that decision.
So is the paperwork full, and it's just a question of whether he submitted it on time? And is there a possibility that in this transition that he did submit it on time and we just kind of lost it?
Possible.
Yeah, okay.
It's possible. It was before our transition. It actually was months ago, right? But,
Or he just missed it. He just missed it.
Sent me the paperwork.
Yeah, but we can also think about the pandemic, maybe just forgive him for that.
Maybe, yeah.
That could
He
be.
might have thought he sent it and he didn't.
Yeah.
right.
That's a possibility.
So he was supposed to send it by December for the extension until June?
December or January,
Okay.
whenever they were doing
And then
it.
he would begin in June, but he missed that. Okay. I'm fine with it.
Start payment fees.
As long as he gets the paperwork incorrect, then I would be fine with
Got
it.
it. How about the second one?
The second one is they're requesting, if they could pay half their payment from June until November of this year because the business is slow.
Half of what they're,
Half of what they're paying now due to their business being slow. That's for 5 months, she's asked.
I don't know. I mean, exactly, where does it end? Like, yeah, I don't know. Whether that's something.
Yeah, I mean, you can make payments anytime you want, of any amount that you want. So, of course, we'll accept payment of anything that you can afford to pay. But, we'll need a little more information in this one. I mean, if she doesn't pay what if that account doesn't pay what you're supposed to pay, Is there a fee associated with them not paying it, a late fee or something like that? You know, what are the ramifications of her not paying in full? But
Extending the loan out, maybe a
Yes.
couple of months or whatever.
well, that's the whole thing that we have to talk about during OCSC, and we can talk about it at this meeting, is what are the parameters of this loan program, and when do we expect it to end? You know, there's a certain expectation, and then there's maybe a discussion to have about that expectation. I don't know, like the back of my hand, so I don't know, is everything supposed to be paid by December of this year?
No, December of next year.
Next year.
the 2-year
Next-
loan.
the 2 year.
And then the ones that have the modification, it would be by the end of, I think, June of 23.
So
But they're all 2-year. There was a discrepancy in one meeting whether or not there are, the terms are different, but they're all 2-year loans.
all 2 years. Okay.
Now,
We'll be living with this for another year or two.
now, if I get a loan from the bank and I have to pay back on a specific date and I don't pay that, there is interest rate. There's a penalty you have to add to that. Do we have anything in the clause, maybe to make sure they understand that if you don't pay within a particular date, how much you be charged? Maybe 1%, 2%.
I don't think there's any penalty, but they are paying 2% interest on the money.
Yeah, but the penalty probably would motivate them, make sure they pay on time.
I don't believe there was a penalty included in it, if they paid on time or if they didn't pay on time.
We'll clarify that.
I had a couple of things written down as we were talking last meeting regarding, like, why would anybody pay if people hear about not paying? So what you could also do is that possibly, if, depending on what the language says, have them draw up another one. So in other words, now, you may not, if you agree to not pay, but you would put the penalties in if there wasn't, at this point, that you're agreeing to make these payments going forward at a certain, but make them sign something else, agreeing to those conditions moving forward. And again, obviously with businesses, I feel horrible for them. You know, it's been a crazy year. However, a lot of them have been getting monies in as well from different agencies for whatnot. Some businesses that you don't think are doing well are receiving monies for the COVID, which they should.
Certainly helps.
Which they should, but
Some
I
have-
just want to make sure that everybody, it's factual that what is going out with the non-payment. But they should sign something moving forward for the last piece. So if it's agreed that, and we do agree that they can pay that going forward, fine. But this is the new contract, so we're all on the same page moving forward. That's all. And if you want to add it, if it's not in there now, you can add it, you can make it a new contract moving forward with a new payment schedule, et cetera. So we finished, as Mike had said, in the 2 years we've done with it.
Yeah, I mean, the risk of loaning our money out of 2% is at high risk. The risk is that we don't get it back.
Right.
That's the risk, right? So I think these loans, yeah, were understood to be somewhat risky. That's why you get 2%. Yeah, so if we can, we can just get.
It's also have to identify or
Yeah.
recognize that if we modify for one,
Probably not a good idea. Yeah, probably not a good idea.
others are gonna want to potentially.
Well, that's why we sign something, and then if somebody wants to extend, well, this is it. This is another option.
Yeah.
And then you at least everybody's on the same page and move forward, and then, it's expected for the money coming in.
Now, I'm also anxious
To get out of that business.
anxious to find out if somebody completely refused to pay, do we have mechanism in place to get our money back?
It would be bankruptcy court, probably some financial institution. We would go after the person, as the lender, we would go after that individual
And I think we have someone.
yeah. At least in this case, they're making a good faith effort to,
I think out of the 49 loans, I think there are a couple that have not paid.
Yeah.
For what was presented to us.
It's 5.
So it's a small percentage. Thank you, but,
I think we booked $70,000 to lose off that.
Okay.
But
so now the number we have to think about for next year's budget, what are we gonna book to lose for next year?
all right, so I have, some of the questions are, what are the ramifications of not paying in full? Can we charge interest or late payment fee, if that's what you're getting at? Are the terms consistent? I think it's kind of what you're, for all borrowers, kind of what you're getting at. What are I missed? Any other questions you'd like to resolve? Okay.
Did they have any of these in the original loan contracts in terms of late payments or?
Any of those details?
Yeah.
And you want to have a new contract going,
I have to look at it.
Yeah.
I don't-
you want to have a new contract going forward for what the new payment schedule is, and you could add the penalties to it.
Right.
So you may not have had it before, but this new, because you haven't paid, now we're adding the penalties.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
So now you're adding penalties.
Great. That's great, so we'll come back to the recommendation now on the 15th. The other item I have is really about the 2022 budget. Chairman and I have talked about this, for a while now, getting into this. You need to see a draft really 15th, if you ask me. One of the things I've been doing is talking to our agents of the IDA. We've contracted work out before, and a number of them are looking to renew those for the following year. So I'm asking them for basically updates on what they were supposed to do for that money and what they've actually accomplished. So I'm asking for that. And then I'm asking them to submit a request for 2022. So I've been doing that. But what I was saying just before you came in, Mr. Chairman, is that there's a lot in that budget between regular IDA, between Accelerator, and then OCFC. There's just a lot of detail that without a CFO right now, I'm just kind of swimming in, and I could use some other, other resource there. And my thought was our auditor, that I have leaned on for a few things, if I'd be able to call on them and be able to drill down on some of this data so that, just to get the history on it, see what's happened, see what was the thinking behind some of it. Just wading through it on my own. There's so much that I don't know that makes it difficult to put a proper budget together, even in draft. So I thought I'll put something down and dirty together. There's so many questions, and I just wanted to get the boards kind of take your temperature on, even if there's a fee involved for me to reach out to say JGS for some information there. The only other option is to go to the former CFO, and I don't think that's really the most appropriate task.
I think the first way to start is you take what was presented at the board meeting last year, and
That's what I'm starting with.
we'll start with that, copy it, paste it, and then mark it up.
And that's exactly the way I adapted it. It's just there's so many things where it's marking it up that I'm not always sure exactly which way to go, what's happening, what do I expect. Certain things like, of course, everything I've witnessed for the past 5+ months, and expenses that we've cut out, revenue's a little easier for me to predict. I think, as difficult as it is to be able to see the future there, but I understand the business. I understand what's coming our way. I can make, I think, intelligent guesstimates as to what to expect for fee revenue and things like that. But some of the expenses are still a little murky, and there's just other line items where I just have questions to be able to make an intelligent projection for 2022. So
I think what we would do here is that if we're not ready to speak about it tonight, we would have another finance audit committee meeting. You would provide the basics and we work it out.
okay,
We sit down and go over it line by line. We could do it on the revenue side, we could do it on the expense side, and literally say, yes, we think this is close, this is what it's been for the last couple of years. Having the historical data is one thing, but predicting what's going to happen moving forward with whether it's votes upon the board that are going to change stuff or just market conditions, it's a Kentucky windage type thing. That's what it is, and that's what a future budget unfortunately is, and that's when you try to measure it against what the actuals are. We have a 6-month completion through June to measure it against what the previous budget was, and I think that's something that we can use as a base. But when it comes down to it, let's try not to make this rocket science. Let's try to make it something that's simple and easy to do. And basically what it is, what was last year's, what are the line items that we have to decide upon. And if we have to dig deeper, maybe then we can get the auditors involved or something like that. But I think one thing you potentially use the auditors for is they made a recommendation last year for our financials to book our potential loss on the loan program, and we booked loss. Maybe you can ask them, what do you project or what do you think we should book in 2022? It's just a placeholder. Until we finalize up our 2021 financials, we don't know what the actuals are. And so it's just a placeholder for 2022. So I think if we do it that way, and we do it in a workshop forum, just that as the agenda item, it could be after the 15th because we have to do this before the end of the year. But the idea, the hope, is that we would have a budget that could be fully presented to the full board for discussion in October.
Okay.
So we have between now and the meeting in October. That's always a good thing. We can always go into November if we have to, but you like to have them done. You don't want them to them last minute.
Yeah.
And I think we can do this between our staff and
Handle as much in-house as we possibly can.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea, just because they're responsible for auditing our books, so
yeah.
you should be too involved with
Yeah.
helping budget, I mean, answering a few questions.
Correct. Yeah, that's, I just wanted to ask the question, what is this, what's the history been on this, where it's going, why was this figure?
I had to understand a little bit what you're saying, because some of those numbers were so different, you know what I mean? Maybe there was something in that category that you didn't know about, or whatever was the reason. So I understand why you'd be asking, but I also understand this simplifying.
I can do that.
Because the numbers were, some of the budget numbers were so.
Yes. As you can imagine, you want something close, something that I run into in the positions of our trying to be a little too fine. Like, I want to get it perfect for you, but I just had limited experience and knowledge with it, so.
I think one of the simplifications is, let's do one set for the IDA and one set for the capital funding board.
Sure.
We don't need to do a separate thing within the IDA for the accelerator.
No, that's another thing.
You know, that just confuses it. We can understand maybe with some extent, we can identify the expenses, the rents and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But let's do one budget for one and one budget for the other. The OCFC one is probably gonna be real easy.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the loan fund and we have the funds that we're sitting upon and anything that we're looking to, any other liabilities that we're laying out there, potentially, Highland Falls restoration grant reimbursement, blah, 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 blah. But the other stuff, I think, we go by it by line, and some of those line items might disappear. Or we may come up with some great ideas we want to add a line item to. You know, that's when you come, that's why you talk about budgets. You know, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a line item in there for like renovations or improvements. We didn't spend any money on it this year, nor we probably, I don't think anyone's looking to do that. That line item may disappear. We might not need it as a placeholder anymore, type of stuff. Or there might be something new. Maybe we want to, maybe this year, maybe next year we want to do another shovel-ready program. You know, that's something to think about. But it's something that the board has to put some, you have to budget for it and you have to do it later. And just because it's in or not in a budget doesn't mean we can't vote upon stuff later, to add stuff to stuff for yourself. We may have a liability that we don't know about. I mean, it's been, 6 months and we're still finding out stuff that we didn't know before. We may have money that's coming in, maybe from people who owe us money. We have money coming in from the Warwick reimbursement. We have money coming in from the court decision and the guilty pleas. We have those type of things. And what do we do with that type of stuff? So all these are very, but I think a basic spreadsheet, Bill, of what it was.
Yep.
And what we potentially, and leave that area blank. We can fill it. Yes, that's 100,000 last year. Electric was 45,000. All right, we're going to predict it's going to be that. So we're going to predict, plus or minus. It's a guesstimate.
Yeah, right. Okay. All right, fair enough.
Don't go crazy. Don't beat yourself up.
Okay, because I just want to make sure it's right but it's not going to be.
Yeah, a big sheet spreadsheet.
Okay, fair enough. Last question is, what would be the timing of that next finance committee meeting you're talking about? After the 15th?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything happening between now and the 15th.
I would hope not, yeah.
Yeah, but I would think between the 15th and the following meeting in October, we can have a committee meeting where we can talk specifically about the budget so that it can be presented and voted upon in October.
Okay.
Or we need to have a special meeting just to vote upon the budget. I hate to constantly do that, but.
No.
Yeah.
No, we'll
Yeah.
in our fiscal year, January 1?
January, yeah.
Do we submit our budget to anybody?
Paris.
It goes into Paris. Does it go to the legislature at all? Yeah, I didn't think so. I mean, obviously, once we vote upon it, it's public, so, it is what it is.
So I'm still going to be working between now and in the next board meeting on the budget. Given that we'll schedule another finance meeting after the board meeting, could you imagine me presenting anything related to the budget on the 15th, or does it make sense?
Maybe last year's budget with the spreadsheet that you have set up.
Okay.
With all the line items and do the two, just so we have a worksheet to work
Yeah,
off of. So we could at least,
yeah.
we could take last year's budget. You could literally do it though with last year's budget and the 6-month actual.
Yeah.
You know,
I noted that.
the 6-month actual, you double that, and that's roughly what we're probably gonna be paying, you know, and expected to receive. That type of stuff. And I think that we talked about it. I mean, we talked about on the expense side. This is gonna be a heavy expense side budget, as everyone knows. The revenue is only produced by the projects of which we have. We haven't had an applicant yet since we took over in March. Hopefully that'll change, but that's a prediction, you know, and one of the things for the next committee meeting is really your knowledge of the market, of the economic development projects that are out there in front of boards that are in municipalities that don't have IDAs.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of what ifs on that one.
Right.
And what could we potentially expect? We don't need to name them by name, but we could say, we can expect maybe 100,000 square foot, $10 million facility, and that's going to potentially generate an application, and that application is going to generate a fee of this. You know, it could be something smaller. It could be there could be a couple things that are out there, but remember, it has to be something that is actual, something that people are interested in. It also can't be something that someone is already committed to. They can't have already bought the property and started construction. You know, so we're in that weird period, right? You know the project, you work with almost all of them, and you know what's going in front of the planning boards just by knowing what's going on, you know, and you know which towns are potentially not, that don't have their IDAs. So it's kind of like a limited window in Orange County. I don't want to downplay what we do here, but we don't have, it's not as big of a landscape as we once potentially thought it would be.
Right.
So,
very true.
And we'll predict it, you know, I mean, maybe it's 1, 2, 3 applications, and maybe it's X amount of fee revenue.
Yep.
You know, the expenses are going to be directly dialed into some of the decisions we're going to be making in the very near future. I think at our next meeting, we talked about, last week, we talked about presenting what we're going to do with the upcoming New Windsor Accelerator program. We have a lease that's expiring, and I believe staff's going to make a presentation of the facts, and we're going to need to make a decision, one way or the other, whether we move forward and stay, whether we stop it and then release that and don't have that expense moving forward. That'll be a decision that we'll make at the next meeting. That'll be part of the budget. There'll be other things like that moving forward too. But that one's probably more, I won't say easier, because we're voting on it probably next month.
Right.
You know, not everything's going to be voted on by next month.
Right. That was everything on my agenda for today. Is there anything on any other finance or other topics you want to discuss?
I had a couple like in our, we talked about, there's a couple like consulting retainers, whatever. We don't have projects, or did we just pay the retainers, or is it work off of
Which ones do you?
applicants? I don't Brown and,
On Rob, so we actually just terminated them yesterday.
Okay.
The county attorneys, that was, for, just, you know, for lobbying, especially in the cannabis, space. And, yeah, we didn't think that was necessarily no longer, just yesterday we terminated them.
okay. So no service, like, because we're not having projects that we would be paying on that, like, nobody on for any type of retainer.
One, for example, is Low-Key Brill, that's the local labor auditor. But, that policy was changed a couple of years ago where we used to pay for it, but now the applicant actually pays that.
No, we spoke about that last
Right,
time.
okay, yeah.
But if there's not any others, then that would be what I was asking for.
Yeah, we just have we have Dean doing AV and IT, and we've been leaning on him an awful lot. We did cut his rate in half, and we're using everything we possibly can with him during this time. We also have Focus Media doing some website maintenance, and they're drafting a story right now for a couple of our projects as part of our retainer. That's something that I had told them we're going to take a look at that, and like everything we said at the last board meeting, everything's going to go out to bid. We're going to get multiple quotes on all of those.
Yeah, so I
There's
mean,
so many other retainers that we're paying.
yeah, I mean, we don't currently have local counsel. Local counsel will be something that'll be a line item. It's something that we're soliciting, or we're going to be soliciting. It's something that we voted on last meeting to do that. Bond counsel, same thing. Labor counsel, same thing. So these are all going to be costs that we'll be getting soon. We'll do, and on the budget side of things, we'll do placeholders, but at this point, you know, we won't know them right away. You know, the hope is to decide upon them by the December board, so we have it ready to go by January 1. Same thing with the CEO position. Executive director will be interviewing and making a determination, and then there's that salary line item that has to be added in the budget moving forward. Right now, it's not in the budget, it's not being paid. There's free, assistance of county, agency and council.
Let's not take that for granted yet, so.
The other, Bill mentioned briefly, we are going to have to, staff is going to get information about these agents. And we're gonna have to make a board decision on if we want, or who we want, or the amounts that we want. These are all board decisions that are gonna have to be made moving forward. And that's based upon what we want these agents to do for us, or what they have or have not done for us in the past. So that's something that will have to be presented, and we'll be doing them on a case-by-case basis. There may be new agents that come into the market, there may be agents that consolidate, there may be agents that disappear. And those are people who are doing stuff that we're asking of them for a specific purpose. That's on the IDA side, not on the capital.
IDA, yes.
On the capital funding side, there is no buddy knocking on the door asking for a grant or anything like that, right? I mean,
The county was the last to do that. That was me. That was the last person to knock on the door for that. I don't know of any other request for OCFC.
yeah, because that one could only go through the OCFC, I believe. It can't go through the IDA because IDAs can't give money.
Right.
Type of stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
Any other items? That's one before your 6:30. I think we're good. That's good. Super. All right, so I'll be ready on the 15th, and I guess we'll adjourn.
Good.
You want to close this, Mr. Chairman?
I'm good. I'm in favor of adjourning.
Okay.
Say aye.
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 Thank you.